Welcome back to Power Panel 365. This is your host, Star Coates.
I'm doing okay. Thank you.
So I'm going to introduce you, and I'm talking to Reverend Justice Clopton, and thank everybody for, listening and tuning in. Reverend, today I wanted to kind of highlight, your roles and responsibilities and the community, and as well as, kind of a broad, like, what do you do, for a living? And I know we've talked before that you told me that you're in the Department of Agriculture.
Yeah.
And that you're a former school teacher, too.
Yeah, I can give you a brief caption of my background. I entered the military at 17. I retired after 20-plus years. After that, there was a collaborative program between the Department of Defense and the Department of Education at the capital level, U.S. capital level, where retirees went into the public school system, and, quite naturally, they paid for our credentialing as well. And the purpose of the program was to put military retirees into the classroom where there were 90% or greater reduced or free lunch communities, if you will. So quite naturally what that drives is poverty-stricken neighborhoods. And in those types of neighborhoods, you have kids who really are suffering at the home structure or the family structure, dealing with a lot of incarceration between parents, drug abuse or drug addiction. So those schools were more likely very challenging for teachers who culturally probably had no idea who they were teaching. So that program was to put structure in the classroom to reduce high turnovers among teachers who just left the classroom because they couldn't deal with that type of student, if you will. But after that, I did that for 7 years, and then after that went back into my profession, which is human resources management, finance, or administrative services. So right now, I've been with USDA for 15-plus years, and I started out as a budget technician, moved from there to be an administrative officer. Now I'm a district administrative officer for the United States Department of Agriculture under veterinary services. Veterinary services is the management of animal products or either animal products for use or consumption for a human being. And what that consists of having veterinarians all over the country, animal health technicians all over the country. And my job is to recruit staff and support the revenue. So briefly, about 2 minutes, I kind of covered a lot. Thanks.
And so you kind of make sure, like, the food is safe, or at least, like, the farming?
Well, the way the country is set up in veterinary services, and like I said, if you Google USDA has about 15 or 20 different entities. You can have animal care, you can have international services, you have veterinary services, marketing and regulatory science. In USDA, the main objective is to track an animal from birth all the way to rendering. Rendering is where it goes for processing, if you will. And an animal product is either used for human consumption, steaks, chicken, pork chops, bacon, whatever. And also there are products that are used, that are made from animals, which is glue, it could be shampoo, it could be other things, if you will. Okay. So veterinary services is really to manage and surveil any animal, whether it's on a dairy farm, whether it's on a breeding farm, wherever it is. Dairy products, it could be poultry, it could be from the sheep and goat commodity, any animal product. In order for that product to go to a grocery store, go anywhere for humans to buy or to consume, it has to meet a certain USDA standard. So in order to do that, you have to strategically place scientists, epidemiologists, animal health technicians, veterinarians throughout the entire country. And in veterinary services, the country is divided into 4 sections: District 1, District 2, District 3, District 4. District 3 is where I am the district administrative officer. And our states include Utah, Nevada, Wyoming, Colorado, Arizona, New Mexico, California, Hawaii, Alaska, Oregon, Washington, basically from the western side and all the way over, even the Samoan Islands. So there you go. And so the entire country is covered. And you got veterinarians, animal health technicians all over the place, everybody. And even the owners, we put programs in place to where owners of animals can get free vaccinations. And then we have to make sure the animal is safe. And if there's a disease that breaks out in a particular commodity, whether it's cattle, whether it's sheep, whether it's horses, that is reported to headquarters USDA. And then from there, we eradicate disease. And that's just the animal side. You have the plant protection and quarantine side, where any plant that's grown, lettuce, pears, whatever, those things are subject to insects and pesticides, stuff like that. So anything human consumption has checked with USDA. It's a big wheel, lots of moving parts. So that's an example as well. Yeah.
Wow, so you play a very big role within their department.
It's a small piece on a big pie. Yeah. Mm-hmm. Yeah.
But you're an important piece too,
Exactly. Yeah. Yeah.
So you like to, would you like to tell us about, some of your engagement with the youth, especially, your time as a teacher?
Well, I would say this, and me being a minister of the gospel, God has a way of strategically aligning you to prepare you and to equip you to do a greater cause, if you will. So that being said, I was sort of shy, but I had to, when I taught in the high school and middle school, I had to get beyond that barrier because he was leading me into the ministry, and then he also was leading me into community activists. And the reason why I say that is because when you look at, let's just take one situation. Not like I was telling you before, I work with PICO, which is People Improving Communities by Organized. That is a huge national organization, and it really tackles the black and brown issue throughout the entire country. And here's what I'm saying. And it relates to youth. So when you look at prison population, and this country is known for even building private prisons now because statistically that bed will be filled, say 14, 12, or 13 years later. What do you mean by that? Kids are targeted as low as 3rd grade to build prisons. And what I mean by that, you have school that's in place, special education, label kids. Go ahead. I keep hearing something. Is this what you want me to say?
I agree with you. Based upon their 3rd grade education, they state that if they cannot read by the 3rd grade, that strategically it is planned that they will make a bed, a space for that child to rear them kind of, in a conveyor belt style funnel them into a prison system based on the 3rd grade reading level.
Well, I'll be short. The reason why I'm mentioning the disparity in prison sentencing is because black and brown kids are targeted that way because you have 2 things going on. Number one, parents do not actively engage the public system of their child when they are in those critical ages because they will allow a school or a principal or a teacher to place their child in those systems special education because they may have a specific learning disability. Okay, then that's why the federal government under ADA, American Disabilities Act, that's what that is for, to get that child that specialized service. And the federal government pays for it, and the schools should not be using those funding to fund their overall budget. And they do. You have to watch that. Where you have Caucasian kids, if they are on the special education, their parents ensure and insist that they get those specialized services. So when you're doing an IEP, individual educational plan, a lot of the parents don't even show up. So that means the teacher's creating that. So those are some of the things where if you don't have parental engagement, your kid can be railroaded into things. So what happens? So the average dropout rate is between 8th and 9th and 10th grade. And what happens? These juvenile detention from there goes to prison. So that's something that we have to work on. But then secondly, it's systematic racism that is designed to do that. But then the reason why I'm bringing that up is because that leads into everything else. It leads into, okay, why is a child now in an environment where it results to drug use? And then from there, that child has a child. And we are products of our own environment. So it's like a chain reaction. So all these systematic racist things that are in place, they are designed to trap the black and brown race, if you will. So I just wanted to use that as an example. That's why you have prison disparities. That's why you can have a judge that will automatically give an African American or a Hispanic or Latino the same crime. A white American would get 3 years probation, home arrest, where a black or brown, if you do the statistical study, they will get 3 years incarcerated, maybe 2 years probation after that. Yeah. And so it's all over the state in this country is that way, and this is set up to do that. And the most part that drives that well, and people don't understand, is we do not get out to vote, and we don't do our research on who's running for office. And so that's why I continue to mention PICO, People Improving Communities by Organizing, because they make a strong effort, especially in every state or every county or every city, to see who's running for elected. Right here in Modesto, you had the congressman. He finally was unseated. Jeff, I can't think of his name. His name would be all on 95. You said, I don't know. He was a farmer, but he was a Republican. He was unseated by another Latino who's Democrat. I can't think of his name, but and that came from PICO, going out and canvassing and getting people registered to vote who normally would not vote. But that's a long story short. So we're dealing with historical systemic racism, and it starts in the family. Yeah. Anyway, okay, I'm done.
And I can agree with you. With the justice system, we were just having a discussion. Me and some of my friends were talking about the types of things that happen where people will, sell drugs, and white people versus black people. A white man can go to jail for a couple of years for powder cocaine, but a black man can get 10 years in prison, for or just that small rock, And not to say that it's just small, but it just, they don't have to have very much, and they were talking about the weights, the ounces of how much you could actually have. And it's truly sad. And forgive me, I'm outside too today, so it's always all kinds of noises. But I like that you just kind of spoke about that, because it is the world today, and that's why I was telling you, like our topics. The world today is a difficult thing to manage because there's so much at one time. But with group effort, I think that us trying to build these bridges to help one another and push things so that way we can get some change. I think that is wonderful. I think it's wonderful.
So I would suggest, in order to create change, because I've said before, real power real hidden. It's hidden. It's not out. Just like Trump. Oh, Trump. No, the people who run the systemic racist systems in this country, that's hidden out, real hidden money, and they get behind people that they want to see either elected in or positioned in or appointed in high positions in this country. And you have to realize it's another thing. The biggest component of that is spiritual. We wrestle against spiritual wickedness in high places and principalities. God has already told us. You can't, and then people try to say, oh, you can separate church and state. No, you can separate church and state, but you can't separate God from man.
Right.
And you have to remember that. And since man has the knowledge of good and evil, that's why God was totally against that. Now that we have a knowledge of good and evil, the Bible says that the depravity of man's mind will never cease, which means he will continuously become even more evil for his strive in pride. So those are the fiery darts that you fight against. But then he also said that he'll put us in the midst of wolves, but we have to be harmless as doves, but wise as serpents. And that's a big statement, because no matter what scheme the devil puts in place, there's a way to undermine it, but you just have to be. It's almost like you got to have a newspaper in one hand, the Bible in the other hand. And so many times we sit by idly. And that's why I mentioned PICO again. I keep harping on that because they have made significant change in this country. When you look at DAPA and DACA, even though it's really pertaining to undocumented workers, but in the Central Valley, you wouldn't be able to eat if undocumented workers and Mexicans who are migrated here for harvest and planting season, if that didn't take place, and I'm talking about Central Valley, I'm talking about Stanislaus County alone. I'm not talking about the city of Sacramento. I'm not talking about Bakersfield. I'm not talking about Stockton. I'm talking about Stanislaus County alone generates more revenue in agriculture than 9 states on the East Coast. One county generates more revenue than 9 states on the East Coast. That's a lot of revenue in one county. So who's doing that? The families own these properties, but who's the one out there digging that land? Those are migrant workers. And I'm not even talking about the slaughter plants. No American wants to work in a slaughter plant. That's the most inhumane place to work. But when you go in there, it's all immigrant workers, and most of them are undocumented. So I just wanted to share that part, too. So here we go. That's another systemic racism. You get these people who are working to generate billions of dollars in revenue, yet they are given crumbs every way. So that's another thing as well. Anyways.
Okay, I got one more question for you, Dan. Let's talk about your roles and responsibilities in the ministry. I know that you do preach at Faith Temple. Let's talk about that for a little bit, kind of go over your roles and responsibilities, exactly, what it is that you do or what you'd like to do.
Faith Temple, yes, I've been there for a while to assist a pastor who has been there for several years now, over 20, and he's moving towards beyond the mid-70s and close to 80. And really, when you hit that mark, there should be in place in any ministry a succession plan to where that ministry transitions over to maybe a younger minister or pastor to continue the work in that vineyard. That being said, the church is the centrality of the success of any community. It used to be 20, 30 years ago, maybe 40 now, where a local pastor knew the local chief of police. A local pastor knew the police officers who were patrolling that community. A local pastor knew the children and the children's parents and the children's parents in that community. And so that disconnect now is what we're facing in a lot of these community unrest, if you will. There's no connection, no community connection with law enforcement. The reason why I say that is not necessarily law enforcement. It could be health assistance or health aid. It could be aid for addictive, someone addicted to a substance or whatever. All that stuff, money generates into a community. So what is a local pastor's responsibility? To stay connected with local legislation, to stay connected with local city officials, to stay connected with the mayor, to stay connected with the county officials, so that they see the moving parts of that particular county or that particular city or that particular community. And that's what it should be. But when you only work within the four walls of that church and you have no connection there, then you don't even know what's going on or what resources is available to assist your congregation. My job as a minister coming along, and I'm not even from this area, but I know what works and I know what doesn't work. And I think in Modesto, if I had to go as far as Merced and go as far as north as Stockton, the African-American church is not unified. It's not joined at the hip. They pretty much work independently or separately as if it's territorial. We have to get out of that.
Territorial.
Yeah. So when you look at the Catholic Church, there's no hierarchy. There's no division. It's one unity. When you look at Jehovah's Witnesses, there's unity. It's one principle. When you look at the AME, or when you look at the Apostolic within certain communities, they are united, and there's no hierarchy. We have to get past that separatism, if you will. So my role is not necessarily tied in to a congregation. My role is as an ambassador, as a spokesman for the gospel of Jesus Christ, is trying to get brotherly love wherever my interactions are, whoever I interact with, for them to see that my desire is to connect and to expand. The only way that you can cure a spreading of some type of thing, you have to corner it, you have to deal with it, and then eradicate it. So in order to do that, you have to have many eyes and many deliberate conversations about differences, but deliberate conversations about how can we unify. So that's my job. That's my role as a minister. And I don't really tie into, I may be the lead minister or pastor in delivering a message of Christ every Sunday or Wednesday, whatever it is. But outside the church, my job is to create relationships with people who don't look like me and with people who have different upbringings or different cultures, so that we can unify. Because when you look at a community, it's all walks of life in that community. You have believers, you have non-believers, you have different religions, different faiths, but everybody lives in that community. Everybody's lights come on by the same utility company that provides that light. Gas, water, same thing. So we have to have that concept as well. So that's my role, is to build deliberate conversations, deliberate relationships with people who look like me and who don't look like me, as long as it's a community initiative, if you will. Yeah. I hope that's pretty much today. Yeah.
And then what are some of the highlights or the joys that you've gotten out of ministering for Faith Temple?
I would say the highlights is, because one thing I do say that's positive, they do have occasions where invitation to other ministries are invited to participate in an anniversary type of event, if you will. And that way you get to meet socialize, not necessarily networking, but get to meet other people. And then you have your individual conversations or group conversations, and you're able to provide insight to whatever the discussion is. And people take away from that. Okay, ooh, I heard that, never heard that concept before. So one of the highlights, if I had to say anything, is that there is a deliberate opportunity to come together to celebrate a particular cause, but then at the same time, the fellowship allows you to have good conversation across the table. Faith Temple is a small, let me just say this, a small congregation. Really, a congregation is 25 members or more. And the other part of that is that the average church in America, the average church that does good work for the Lord is between 75 and 150 members, between 75 and 150 members. You got mega churches all over the place, but the average church in America is 75 to 150 members. That's it.
Okay.
So, the opportunities for Faith Temple would be greater in the effect we have in the community if the congregations were bigger, yeah. But it's not, yeah.
And, some of the joys that you get out of ministering there, what gives you joy, about ministering there? And even in specific, even though, we know how everything is going, especially right now, everybody's transitioning in different ways. But what still gives you some joy about ministering for Faith Temple?
My like I said again, my joy in ministering is not tied into a church. My joy in ministering is spreading the gospel of Jesus Christ, whether it's one person in the audience, or whether it's 5, or whether it's 50 or 500. It don't make a difference to me. My joy is I have delivered the message that was given to me to be preached, and then God lets it fall on good grounds wherever it has to go. So the joy of me, no matter what platform I'm on, is I was called to preach the gospel of Jesus Christ. And when I do that, that's my joy every opportunity I get, if that answers your question.
Yes. Mm-hmm. And as far as, let's say, some goals that you maybe want the communities to set for themselves, what would be some things that you would even, state or suggest that those are some of the things that you would want to see? Like if you want to see some growth or some change, what would be some of the things that you would want to see?
I would say if I had to prioritize things that come right to my mind is that there's a deliberate and a desire for let's just deal with the African American church, which, there is a minority here in Central Valley, especially Modesto, but have a deliberate attempt to come together and actually have a person who would lead the conversation to make sure, to gradually bring everyone together, to have a deliberate conversation on what are the issues that is faced in not necessarily the black community, but in the brown community as well. What are some of the issues that we think is being missed in certain communities? What are some of those critical issues? Is it in the school system? Is it in the community? Is it in just beautifying a community with sidewalks, with fencing, with cleaning up debris? It's funny how the most jacked up neighborhoods in Modesto is in the black or brown communities. It's not in other communities. And why is that? Why is it that if something happens in one community, it can be fixed in a week, and same thing happens in another community? It takes a year or even beyond that. So, and then actually have the community, the churches come together and say, hey, we're going to have a deliberate team, whether it's 5 or 3 or 4 people, to really go to these meetings with city council to actually establish that. Yeah, that's, if that makes sense. Anyway, so it's like, go ahead.
Yes, that was a great thing that you just said, us trying to get us together, like the word says, examine thyself first. So I think that sometimes I think some of our issues have been trampled over for so long that it's become a normal thing to just kind of bypass it, even if it's your own people. Sometimes it just gets bypassed, and you just you get frustrated and you're tired and you want to see change and growth. But I truly think that it's a team effort, just like you said, and even the church. Church is getting together and kind of plan out exactly what it is that they want to do, what types of changes do they want to see, how can they help their communities grow. And even if that means, there's somebody, say for instance in Sacramento, and they're like, hey, we need help up here. Folks do kind of get together and they will travel to help. And you do have to have those relationships built to even get something like that started, to get help from outside of your community. It takes networking and actually building a relationship in order to make it work. Is there anything that you want to add or ask me, for instance?
Well, I think one of the things is I would like to know a listing of, and this just came to me, like I always pray before I do anything. I would like a listing of how many black-owned businesses is in Modesto, or even 20 miles up the road, 20 miles down the road, whatever. How many black businesses are really here? I knew a guy that he goes to the house. He owned a sandwich shop. That guy had the best sandwiches I've ever tasted, and he recently sold the business. He's African American. Actually, he used to go to Christian Law, which is one of the other churches. I would like to know what are some of the black businesses that are really present and operating in Modesto, and then. Because I know it was another barbecue place that started up. It lasted 6 months, then it failed. And I believe it's because they didn't have, I think NAACP was trying to get the word out. They had a first day opening, a ribbon cutting ceremony. After that, 6 months, it failed. It was right by Walmart on Mitchell Road in Ceres. But anyway, it went away. It only lasted 6 months. And I believe because lack of exposure. So I would want to know what black businesses are owned here, run here in Modesto, and then where are we missing? Because I know we like getting our hair done, I know we like getting nails done and feet done. I know we like good food, we like cars, we like getting the cars clean. But what are some of the businesses that we like doing and having available to us that's not, and we have to go to outside of our own in order to have those services? And the reason why I say that is when you go to Crow's Landing, that entire street is all Mexican owned, right next to each other, and it's always packed. You can't even go down there, except for you got Carl's Jr. and all that. These other little independent businesses is all on that Crow's Landing. We should have something, not necessarily a road up, but at least somewhere strategically throughout Modesto where it's supported by, and just selling products just to black folks or services just to black folks. We're not saying that. Just a business that should represent some of the things that, we have to go for services. I would like to know what listing do we have, what a listing of black-owned businesses. And I know about in the 70s or 80s, there was one Chevrolet dealership, that was owned by an African American. I know him. I've met him a couple of times, and his business folded, went under. And there's another black-owned business that's on McHenry, and I think the father, he recently passed, but it came from Oakland, and I think they own a Kia. It's two Lexus is a black-owned family, and then I think they have a Kia as well. But it's right now McHenry. They came originally from Oakland. But that's just one of the highlights that I know about. So I would like to know a listing of black-owned businesses here in Modesto. And we get that out, and try to market it or advertise for them so that, they could stay in business, if you will. Yeah, if that makes sense.
Sure. And, another thing that I do for Power Panel 365, I will, set up an ad for businesses, whether they're small, struggling, just beginning and they want to kind of get some exposure. I'll give them an ad on my page just to kind of help, the businesses out, especially Black businesses, because we do understand that there is a stigma or even a stain sometimes when you say, hey, I'm a Black business. And they don't expect that. They get excited when they first start their business, but they don't expect that people may not want to come into their business, just because they're Black. They expect the service to be low. They expect for the person to scam them. They expect all these misconstrued things, and even the statistical things that that get placed upon us. I had a conversation with a lady, and she said, you know what, I'm going to try my best for 1 month to just buy from Black-only businesses. Do you know she had the most difficult time she could ever have? And she said, we don't have laundromats. We don't have our own grocery stores. There's so many things. We don't have a bank. There's so many things we just don't have. And, every time me and her talk, Black Wall Street comes up. Ansville comes up. These places where that existed, that we had our own barbershop, corner store, the doctor, the librarian, everybody in that section was Black, But I think that we're so used to coming together and integrating that has that dream of, and not to say we can't have it, but that dream of, I just want to be Black, buy from Black, everything Black. It has kind of gotten watered down because then you have, it's like we've got two sides going against each other, but it's still we're the same colored people. You got those that say, look, I just want to mix in and integrate and blend in with everybody and live my life. I don't care about all that black stuff. And then you got Black people that are like, no, for my people, by my people, with my people. So
no, you'll never be successful that way. When I mention Black business, that means that the owners or the entrepreneurs created that business, yet their services cater to all walks of life. You'll never be successful catering just to your people. You're not going to do that. Even when you look at, when you go buy a car, more like it's a white owner or a white family that owns it. But they sell to all walks of life. They just, even though they could make a lot of money just selling to white, but that's not their goal. The goal is you have, I know a lot of my friends, counterparts are Mexicans or either Latino, and they like being able to experience the Black culture periodically. They do. And let me give you a case in point. In Pasadena, and I know the family, in Pasadena, in Hollywood, in Anaheim, there's a place that's called Roscoe's Chicken and Waffle. That is a Black, that's a Black, hold on, let me finish. That's a Black family that originated from exposure from Fred Sanford. Back in the day, because they just put on shows back in Hollywood, back in the 70s or 80s or whatever, and it was late at night, they needed somewhere to go. That's where it originated from. But they're all over. And when you go to Roscoe's, you got people from all walks of life in there because of the unique of the food. Yeah. Mm-hmm.
Oh, and I'm not trying to mix up your words or what you were saying when you asked. I just wanted, like, you're curious to know what kind of businesses are out here, but I just wanted to give you a little background on it, the situation that I had experienced with someone, just trying to find kind of up and down California, what kinds of things do we own or what kinds of things do we have? And then when we do have something, a lot of times it's 10, 15, 20 people are on the same thing. Well, we don't all need to make T-shirts. We don't all need to make cups. We don't all need to make shoes. Like, we need other things too. And not to say that, they don't service other races of people. I think that it's a terrible idea to just say, I won't, even to put a sign up and say, I only serve black people only, because that type of thing happened to us already. So not to say that they can't service other groups, other racial groups. I think that's an idea because it builds some business for them,
I wanted to add something here, is that there is an issue between the black and brown races, between the Latino and the black, the Mexican and the black. There's a hidden, not a hidden, it's an exposed racist tone. Mexicans don't marry black, Mexicans, blacks are this, Latino, blacks is that. And here in the Central Valley, I see it, just almost like road rage. It's like who's jockeying, and I don't like using that term, who's positioning themselves to be under the white man. Okay, the white man is number one. I'm sharing this with you. Who's number two? And it's like you hear some of this between Mexicans and Latinos talking bad about black, and then blacks, vice versa. Who's next in line? And I really, I've been in some of these conversations like, are you serious? Latinos and Mexicans is talking down that blacks is not clean, and they lazy, don't want to work, liars, cheaters, it's just on and on and on. And these things, and they really, since, especially in California, in the prison population, where they have these gangs and, it's all Latino against black, and it's very violent. And they get out of prison, they keep spreading that venom. So that's another component that we have to look at, deliberate conversations to come over that barrier. Who's trying to be second? Then, downplaying one race against another. So that's another part, that the deliberate conversation, bit by bit, we have to minimize that, because it's very prevalent here in California, especially in the Central Valley.
Well, I think that we have been advertised and branded as a people, and we have been advertised and branded in such a way that the stereotypical things that have been placed upon us, just like you just described. They're a thief, they're a liar, they're bad, and you've had this country has been in black and white and so long that white is right and black is bad. So it's a thing that will constantly play out because it's a foundation. It's a part of the foundation of this country. And not to say that there aren't people that are tired of it, and that either they don't play a part in it, or they do play a part in it. They feed into those things. We have a lot of work to do. This country in general has a lot of work to do.
Yeah, like I said, we have to be strategic how to combat against it, but it will never change to where it is equality. It's not going to happen, because as long as evil is present, you're not going to get that. And only in a evil-free world will you have that. That's why, and like I said, it goes back to, that's why God did not want man to know the knowledge of good and evil, because it wasn't going to serve any good purpose. So here we are until this. In a perfect world, it would be what you're suggesting. But for thousands of years, hundreds of years, you have seen, even back in Jesus' days, they were prejudiced. The Jews against the Gentiles, Jews against the Samaritans. I mean, it's just on and on and on, So that's not going to. It's just, how do we make things livable and better than being worse? You're always going to have the evil presence, but how do we combat that? How do we make a life better in the presence of evil? Yeah.
Rev, I have one request from you.
Okay.
The last minute of our conversation, can you lead us out in prayer? And even before you do, I thank you so much for joining me, and we will continue our conversation with another conversation another day, if that's all right with you. But if you can lead us out in a prayer.
Okay, we'll do that. Dear God, we thank you again, Sister Star. We just thank you for her desire, her zeal to make things better for mankind. It's a small start, but it can. This is a marathon. It's not a sprint. We just pray for your godly divine wisdom, your godly divine understanding, and your godly divine knowledge as she continued to walk this path. We pray that you would put people in her path that will add value to the overall objective that she's trying to do. She is a spokesman for you. We pray that she proceed and that she carry out this mission in love, and that you give her the wisdom to stand in the midst of wolves, but use strategy of peace and love in order to overcome the fiery darts. We know that it's a challenge, but we know if you are with her, she can continue to cross the bridge. Thank you for all you have done today, what you will do tomorrow and in the future. In Jesus' name, amen.